Welcome to ODRD Rewired, a podcast from the Connecticut State Department of Education's Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities, where we connect research, policy, and practice to support equitable literacy outcomes for all students. Today's episode focuses on the Connecticut English Learner and Multilingual Learner Framework, a statewide resource designed to leverage students' linguistic assets and create coherent, evidence-based systems of support for English learners and multilingual learners across Connecticut. This framework reflects years of collaboration among educators, families, community partners, and state leaders, and offers guidance around instruction, professional learning, family engagement, and continuous improvement. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Megan Alubicki-Flick, English Learner Multilingual Learner Consultant, and Dr. Maribel Olivero, Director of Equity and Languages at CSDE. Together, they played key roles in developing this framework and will help us better understand the thinking behind the document, how districts can use it, and what impact CSDE hopes to see as it is implemented across the state. To begin, we're going to take a step back and talk about how this framework came to be. Thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
To start us off, can you briefly share some background on how the English Learner and Multilingual Learner Framework was developed and what led to the creation of this document? And then building on that, how were stakeholders such as educators, families, and community partners engaged throughout the development process?
Sure. So this document is a long time coming. It's been something that people in the field and certainly us at the department have been eager to enact for a long time. So we really wanted to build a document that would serve as an underlying foundation for the collective work that we do to promote the success and advance the outcomes of our English learner, multilingual learner students around the state. So this, like I said, it took a while to build. And so as a result, we kind of built this over two phases of time. There were two work groups over the time that were convened to develop this document. So the first work group was convened in late 2021. So if we do the math, we're talking 4 years. And that work group met several times in 2022 as well. And that group was comprised really of ELML people, ELML experts that they were from a range of districts and entities from around the state. But at that time, there were some conditions that made the continuation of the work more challenging. So specifically, that was a time when the State Board of Education was undergoing a reconsideration of its own board goals. So when we were thinking of what we were going to build and align to, that was in a state of flux at that time. Also at that time, we were not working with an external partner. So while that served to create kind of the foundational work for this, it wasn't until about 2023, we were able to engage with an external partner and invigorate the work. At that time, the board had come out with its 5-year comprehensive plan, and so we had more work to ground and align to as well. So at that time, as part of the framework development process, we re-invited those original participants from the original work group, and we included a broader range of interest holders to create this really robust group representing this array of professionals from various districts and regions, organizations, and groups. And so when we had a draft document, we offered interest holder engagement sessions, which were like focus groups. And that was for all interested individuals. And we put the word out very widely and hoped to get a lot of participation. And so I'm going to pass it to my colleague Maribel, who will talk about what that process entailed.
Thank you, Megan. So we had over 100 participants that engaged in the review process. This reflected a strong interest in collaborating and supporting this work. And we were very, very pleased. And so the sessions really provided some dedicated time for participants to review the document in advance of the meeting and be ready to provide some valuable feedback during the meetings. Participants had opportunities to collaborate with each other and discuss the framework with colleagues in similar roles. And so that really allowed for them to have some conversations that were more focused and relevant. And so, of course, we received a lot of really thoughtful and actionable feedback on the document and its components, which we then carefully reviewed and integrated within the document. And so as a result, we end up with a document that is more robust, comprehensive, and really responsive to the field.
What a long process, but the outcome is great. Thank you. Thank you for grounding us in the developmental process. That context really helps set the stage for understanding what the framework prioritizes. With that in mind, what are the guiding principles of the framework, and why were these priorities identified as essential for supporting English learners and multilingual learners?
So the ELML framework is really grounded in 4 guiding principles: skilled educators, evidence-based practices, family and community engagement, and reflection and continuous improvement. So these principles were developed using an asset-based mindset and recognizing and valuing the strengths that multilingual learners bring. And so in developing the framework, we reviewed and aligned it with existing work, not only from looking at what other states have done, but also just to ensure coherence and reflect some best practices. And a key priority throughout this process was ensuring the diverse needs of both students and educators. And we were really trying to be very thoughtful in the way that they were reflected in the document. Along with that, we have the framework identifies 4 key roles that collectively guide how MLs are supported across Connecticut. That was part of the idea, an essential really component of the document, and that's really a shared responsibility. And so within the document, each guiding principle is connected to the 4 key roles. And for each role, the framework includes some clear indicators or actionable steps that educators and stakeholders can take to effectively support EL/ML students.
And to better understand these principles, we developed some key statements that we feel helps to clarify their meaning and their focus. So I'm just going to briefly go over what those key statements are. They're kind of aspirational. I think that you'll understand what I mean as I go through them. So, excuse me, in the case of skilled educators, our statement is that all EL/ML students have equitable access to high-quality, well-prepared educators who establish high expectation for learners and are equipped with the knowledge needed to support the linguistic needs of students. For evidence-based practices, which is our second principle, our statement is that all ELs/MLs thrive in schools where educators have the necessary support and resources to implement evidence-based strategies guided by research, data, and empirical evidence to enhance student learning. For Principle 3, Family and Community Engagement, our key statement is that all educators create and nurture welcoming school climates that celebrate the assets of ELs/MLs and empower families and communities to be active participants in the school community. And last but certainly not least, Principle 4 is reflection and continuous improvement. And our key statement is that all educators contribute to a culture of ongoing reflection and data-driven continuous improvement that promotes a robust and dynamic learning community and holds all educators accountable for positive outcomes for all ELs/MLs. And these key statements really hone in on those key elements of each of the principles. And so you'll find as you go through the principles, which are really hardy, and as Maribel said, really tease out through the indicators the various tasks and responsibilities and actions that can be taken for individuals in the various key roles. We feel that these statements really encompass and guide our aspirations and our goals within those 4 principles of the framework.
Thank you for that. I was taking a look at the document, which you probably can't see on the screen, and we're going to show it later. But I love the structure of the document. It's so easy to read, and because it's so well organized. And I love the fact that you provided the principles at a glance first, and then went in depth to it. The whole structure of it was very easy from someone who came from a district and now is at the state level. I found the document very easy to read and navigate. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. It's great to hear that. And that does reflect a lot of the interest holder engagement process. We got a lot of feedback about readability, accessibility, and what would make the document useful and relevant and accessible. And so we tried to integrate those things very intentionally. So it's great to hear. And we didn't make you say that either.
No, I was making, like, I really wanted to, like, I as a person who has to use CSDE vetted resources and guidance documents to provide information and assistance to LEAs and, parents, I tried to print out any new document that's created by the CSDE and really, engage in it. And when I was going through this, I was like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love the structure of it. I know it's so silly, but being a former special education teacher, I'm like, oh my God, the icons and the infographic, like the visuals were really appealing, but just like the ease of navigation, I found helpful. So I'm glad that your stakeholders provided that feedback and you guys engaged with that intentionally, because I think the outcome is perfect. And so now that we've talked about principles that anchor the framework, let's shift to what this means for districts and schools in practice. So one of the questions I have is, how will districts be supported in implementing this framework effectively?
So we have a professional learning plan that is currently in development to support the implementation of the framework. The plan will include role-specific learning opportunities with both in-person and on-demand sessions to really make sure that we are meeting the varying needs and schedules of educators across the state. But professional learning really is going to be helping participants not just become familiar with it and with the framework and its components, but also really try to share some practical strategies for integrating it into their own context, right? So learning opportunities are really going to be differentiated for varying levels of experience and comfort with comfort levels working with Ls and Mls. And so we want to make sure we're emphasizing collaboration, brainstorming, and really provide some flexible, asynchronous options for learning and reflection, right? And, one of the things that we also really talk about is the idea that we need to make sure that we embed the fact that we're not saying take this document and throw everything else out, and which sometimes people misinterpret when we put out a document. This is really intended to support work that's in place, work that is happening, and to really integrate it with what is already happening in the school districts. And so that is something that through the professional learning we'll make sure that we are highlighting and reminding folks to do.
And so implementation, we all know, right, from at the state, that implementation is only meaningful if it leads to impact. So that brings us to our next topic. What are the short-term and long-term outcomes that you're hoping to see as districts engage and implement the framework?
So districts are strongly encouraged to implement the framework, as Megan already spoke to, and we want them to use it as a guiding tool in their instructional practices and systems level work. And so the framework really should be embedded. And I know I mentioned it before, really embedded into existing structures and processes rather than treated as something that is a standalone initiative. Implementation should also support the development of a shared understanding of effective asset-based practices. And so that's something that's really very, very important. And, emphasize ongoing collaboration with families as a critical component of LSMLs and working with this population of students, promoting access to high quality instruction for all multilingual learners, and collaboration across roles with districts and schools. And again, going back to that, the framework being designed to really encourage shared responsibility for LSMLs across various professional roles. And so a collective approach is really essential for improving student outcomes and long-term success. And I know I'll pass it on to Megan to contribute to this response.
Yep, I second all of that, of course. And I will just add that we're very hopeful that the implementation of the framework also will help move the field away from some of the kind of the reactive practice that we sometimes find toward more intentional, proactive, really systems-oriented work for our students. Because we know that in education, we have various ways of saying it, but there's things that come up, and that is a reality. We have to put out fires. We have situations that are the situation of the day or a critical matter that needs taking care of. But we want to be thoughtful in our approaches to how we're serving our LSMLs in a systemic manner, and we're really hopeful that through the implementation of the framework and the shared responsibility that Maribel spoke to, we will be able to build more systemic approaches and more proactive practice in how we serve our LSMLs.
I'm all about being proactive rather than reactive. I actually shared a component of the framework today with colleagues that I'm collaborating with on assessment in special education. And I said, oh my goodness, like Megan and Maribel came out with the ELML framework, and, take a look at this section. We were just talking about, assessments for special education and, for students that may be considered ELML. And so I took that part of the framework and shared it with them. So it really helps that collaboration across fields, like you had mentioned in your conversation. And so I think that's really important. And that introductory part of the framework, I think is helpful when you talk about the different levels of collaboration and overlap.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's another component that was very important to us in the design of the document. The front matter is hearty. It's rich.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot there, and that was really intentional. There's a lot of other areas, broad initiatives, and educational matters that are addressed in the front matter. And that's because our ELML students are a part of all of those things. Mm-hmm. They're a part of literacy initiatives. They may be duly identified. They are entitled to civil rights. So all of these educational matters maybe like a little adjacent to the ELML population. They're not specifically about ELML students, but they pertain to ELML students, just like they pertain to all. And so we wanted to make that visible and relevant by calling that out in our front matter. Or MTSS is another one. And so I'm glad to hear that you see that.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I don't know if we've lost Maribel, but I'm going to continue with, we have, I think.
I'm here.
Okay, perfect.
I don't know what's going on with the camera.
We can't see you.
It's all right. We only have a couple more questions to kind of go through. And so as districts begin this work, it's important to think about what's possible moving forward, right? So looking ahead, what advice would you give districts or educators as they begin working with the framework for the first time?
So Maribel really teed me up. She made mention of this earlier as we were talking, and I think it deserves restating again. So implementing the framework does not mean having to throw away your current practice or having to start over. Full stop. She said that before, and that's something that's very foundational in our beliefs around this framework, around its implementation. So we're not starting over, we're not throwing everything away, and really rather we know that a lot of times educators are actually implementing some or many of the indicators that are in this document already. But we also recognize that what might not be happening is that this is being done with intentionality or really on a systemic level. So those areas are potentially opportunities for growth. And so the framework, we see the framework that as being intended to assist and support educators in a variety of roles. And it is not meant to be evaluative or to call out areas of weakness, but rather it's meant to identify key actions that can be taken and can serve as foundational moves to support LS/MLs in the different contexts of their academic instruction and school experiences. So we know that when we collectively commit to this work, we can and will better support our LS/MLs and will ultimately help to promote their success. And I think, Maribel, you were going to also add a few suggestions or pieces of advice.
Yes, thank you, Megan. We talk about recommendations, right? But a lot of times we work with professionals and they know, sometimes we take for granted some of the things that we already know, right? So for example, we are highly recommending engage in professional learning opportunities. You have to participate in training. And so we really encourage everyone to do that. So that would be number one, engage in professional learning opportunities. Secondly, start where you are. No need to reinvent the wheel. Just where are you? And, plug away little bit by little bit. Number three is embed the framework into existing systems and practices. And I know I mentioned it earlier, Megan reinforced it, or I'm saying it again because it's really, really important. And number four is pace yourself. Reflect. You want to reflect regularly and continue to identify areas for growth and improvement. And so, there you have it. You have the four: engage in professional learning opportunities, start where you are, embed the framework into existing systems and practices, and pace yourself.
I love the four. And it reminds me of like the structured literacy and dyslexia competencies that the ODRD published too, right? Like they're not meant to, be this framework or these competencies that we expect all teachers to, know and be able to do every day for every student, right? It's really about that, self-reflection and continuous growth and learning. We're all lifelong learners, and we all, can engage in that. Hey, maybe I'm not so strong in this. This is a practice I need to improve on, or I want to improve on, or I want to learn better about. So I appreciate those big four ideas that you just presented. That's great. We hope this conversation has helped clarify both the purpose and the promise of the English Learner and Multilingual Learner framework. Throughout our discussion, we heard how stakeholder engagement shaped the framework, how its guiding principles center skilled educators, evidence-based practices, family and community engagement, and continuous improvement, and how districts will be supported through professional learning and implementation guidance. Most importantly, this framework reinforces a shared responsibility ensuring that English learners and multilingual learners have equitable access to high-quality instruction that honors their linguistic and cultural assets while supporting academic success. We're very grateful to Megan and Maribel for sharing their insights and for the leadership and collaboration that went into developing this important resource. For districts and educators just beginning to engage with the framework, we encourage you to start with curiosity, reflection, and focus on coherence, using the framework as a foundation rather than an add-on. Thank you for listening and for your work you do every day to support students, families, and school communities. Be sure to check the episode description for links to the framework and additional resources, and join us next time as we continue to explore how systems, instruction, and collaboration can better serve all students. Until next time, this is ODRD Rewired.